Well, welcome to the Njoroge Washege podcast. Today, we are going to talk about a very, very heavy topic. We're going to be talking about America. Why I left America. And for me, America seems like my unintegrated shadow. You know, it's a place that has always been with me. It's a place that I've always dreamt of. It's a place that I got an opportunity to live in. But it's also a place that has taught me so many things. It's a place that has disappointed me in many ways. But I feel like it's a story. It's a story that I've never shared, and I should share this story because it can help somebody else who has dreams of America, or who's in America, or who's trying to navigate their way through the American system. So before I begin, I just want to give you a story of or a history of what America is. America, of course, is in North America. There's two uh, chunks of continents. There's North America and then there's South America. So America is found in North America. In North America, there is, of course, United States of America, which is America, and then there is Canada. So those are the sort of two major countries in North America. So America was actually largely an inhabited land. America was initially a country. It was just a country, with native people, Native Americans, maybe in the 15th, 16th century, and even earlier. It was um, just a beautiful land, I guess, created by God. And then, starting in the 16th century, I think from the 15th century, 16th century, people like Columbus, the famous Christopher Columbus, sort of started to come and explore the frontiers of the world, and of course, they discovered America. And there was colonies of people coming from Europe and other places. And in the 15th and 16th century, due to persecutions in Europe, many people started to run away to look for a new home, and most people landed in America. And of course, when you go to America, there's so many people, white people, and all sorts of people from all around the world. But the white people from, I guess, from Europe were the first people to enter America. Those, British people, Italian people, Swedish people, uh, all sorts of people. And of course, there was slavery and capturing of slaves to go and work in the plantations of Jamaica and America and other places, the cotton fields of America. So America has a, and then of course the America was actually a British colony. So these British guys, they just weren't. The British Empire was all over the world, including America. But of course, people from American, the Europeans who had settled in America were like, "Ay, hapana, what to?" Let me speak in English. These people are taking advantage of us. They were, taking, they were working in America, and then all the wealth was sort of going to Britain. And so the Americans were like, fuck these colonizers. Let's take back our country. And that's when people like the first president of America, George Washington, sort of led the American forces to sort of, and they fought a long war. By the way, this, you see, this here, this is George Washington. Maybe I'll also put a graphic of George Washington. He fought a brutal war to sort of liberate America to be what it is today, and to create the United States of America. So that's how America was created. And then they fought other wars between like the North and South, and some of the issues were like slavery and things like that. until they unified the whole, I think it's 50 states or 52 states. I can't remember. I think it's 50 states. And that's what constitutes the United States of America. So America has a very interesting story. And then, so that was in the 17th century. And then in the 18th century, of course, that's when they were fighting all these wars. And then in the 19th century, that's when, you know, there was all these world wars. There was World War One, yeah, with Germany wakajifanya kichwa ngumu, or you know, there was Hitler, and there was World War II actually 1945 with Hitler and everything. And it is, the Germans, it was actually called the axis of evil. The Germans, the Japanese, and the Italians. So there was Mussolini, there was the Emperor Hirohito in Japan, and then there was Hitler in Germany, were trying to actually take over the world. Yeah, and so they were going all over Europe, causing war. That's what was actually World War II. So that's a short history of World War II. And then America sort of brought in its forces and combined forces with the Allied forces and sort of won World War II. And so America emerged as a superpower, after the World War II, sort of after they won the war against Hitler. They were the sort of sole superpower until now. So America has a long history, almost 250, 300 years of rich history of wars and conquest and bravery and the fights for freedom, rights. And so it's a very rich place. And so it's from that history that, I grew up learning in school about this great place called America. And beyond its history, of course, there was a lot of cultural American things going on. There was all these programs coming out of America when I was growing up. There was things like The Bold and the Beautiful. I don't know if you guys remember The Bold and the Beautiful, with the rich handsome men, kina sijui Ridge and Brooke and all these funny things. There was Santa Barbara, the program, and I remember just staying up to late night just watching all these programs. There was like Midwest cowboy stories like Terrence Hill and Bud Spencer. There was Zorro coming out of California. There was the Terminator, Arnold Schwarzenegger and all these crazy macho man American movies. There was Rambo, the American mercenary sort of killing everybody in Vietnam and things like that. So that's the image that I grew up with of America, and I was always like, wow, this is great. I mean, this is the empire. This is it. I want to go to America. And from the music side, we grew up listening to Tupac, Biggie, and in the 2000s, people like Jay-Z, Rihanna, Snoop Dogg, and people like that. In terms of schools, we'd have schools like Princeton, Harvard, all these great places, and this American culture really inspired us to want to go to America, right? So American culture has been very strong, especially in Kenya. It was very strong in the 80s, 90s, the 2000s, and America was really the place to go. And so I was really fascinated to go to America, and my mind was always like, if I ever go to America, I'll become great and all these things. I'll probably become a superstar and whatever it is. And so when I finished my studies in Kenya, I remember when I finished my degree, I was actually doing my master's that was the first time that I got an opportunity to actually go to America. And between 2012 and 2024, for 12 years, I was in and out of America. I've been in and out of America, I think, 4 times. And so I understand a little bit about the modern America that is there. Yeah, so within the 12 years, I traveled to different places, and I experienced different things. And I think sharing this story will, help people who are thinking of maybe moving to America, either rethink, or I don't know, or maybe get encouraged to go to America. So the first time that I went there was in 2012. 2012 December. I was a master's student at the University of Nairobi, and then I got an opportunity at the University of Wyoming, in a town called Laramie, to go there. And I was actually an exchange student, so I was on a J1 visa. So I know now that Trump has banned many countries from I think 75 to 80 countries from entering America, but yeah, so it's becoming more difficult to get into America. But I've held a couple of visas. I've held the J1 visa, which is like the scholars visa. I've held the B1, B2 visa, which is like the visitor visa. And Obama did a good job by ensuring that Kenyans, when they get the B1, B2 visa, they get 5 years, and I hope it stays like that. I've also been on an F1 visa, which is the famous student visa. And the last time I was there, and I was like, now I'm done with America, I was actually in the asylum system. And so I understand some of the challenges of not only obtaining visas, but also trying to change like your statuses from an immigrant, from a non-immigrant visa to an immigrant. So there's actually 2 types of visas when you go to America. There is the immigrant visa, like the green cards. So that means that you're going there to stay forever. And then there's the non-immigrant visa. So maybe you're going to visit, or you're going for graduation, or you're just going to visit. So that's the visitor visa. And then there's the F1 visa, which is the student visa. Maybe you get a scholarship to an American university. You get the F1 visa. And also there's the J1 visa. So I'm going to talk about my experiences with some of these visas. So in 2012, I got a J1 visa to travel to the University of Wyoming in Laramie. And for me, that was my first time outside Africa. And so I was so excited. And I remember I had a 24-hour flight from Nairobi to Denver, Colorado. And I remember, I was so excited. I took a British Airways flight from Nairobi, and then I flew to London, and then from London I flew across the, I don't know, I think it's the Atlantic, to, actually my first place that I landed was Chicago O'Hare International Airport. And for a boy just coming out of the rural Kenya, I was shocked by what I saw. Like, just landing at the airport, it was like a different world. It was so developed. The places were so huge. And yeah, so that was my first welcome to America, Chicago O'Hare International Airport. And then I stayed at the airport, and then I for a couple, I think I had a layover of 1 hour, and then I flew to a DIA in Denver International Airport in Colorado. And then that's where I met my host, who then, and I remember we traveled with a guy called Momanyi. Momanyi was an interesting guy. And then we traveled from Denver in Colorado. We took a vehicle up through Fort Collins in Denver, and then no, it's in Colorado. Colorado is the state, and then Denver is like the city. And then we landed in Laramie. And Laramie is a small university town, and this was my first exposure to America. And there I met, And you know, Wyoming is a very white state. So like, I don't know, I think 95% of people there are white. And you know, I met very good people. You know, they received us. I think they really took care of us. And you know, my memories at the University of Wyoming are some of the best memories actually. And I usually joke, you know, when I become a dollar billionaire, I'll probably donate $1 or $2 billion to the University of Wyoming, because I mean, I felt right at home. Wyoming is a very cold place. I remember it would get to negative 33 degrees Celsius, and you know, it was just an interesting place. So this was the first time that I ate McDonald's. You know, went to places like Albertson, shopped in places like Walmart. This was the first time I saw like a huge football stadium, the War Stadium in Laramie. You know, I made American friends, and then you know, I was immersed in the university space of America, the American education system. And no doubt, the American education system is, I guess, one of the best in the world. Yeah, so I was lucky to have that experience. And then, so it was just a 6 months thing. So I went, and then I came back to Kenya. So that was on the J1 visa. So on the J1 visa, you know, everything was sponsored. You know, everything was smooth and fun, and you know, we had a lot of fun in Wyoming. I really miss Wyoming. So University of Wyoming, let me come back and you know, talk to the students and you know, share my experience there. I really enjoyed being at the University of Wyoming. It was a very also social place. We used to go out, you know, to the bars in downtown Laramie. I remember the Backhorn Bar was like where it was all happening, and then would go rock climbing, and you know, it's just beautiful nature out there. You know, Yellowstone National Park is very close there. So it was so much fun, and I really miss Wyoming. So that was like my smooth landing into America, smooth in and smooth exit. So that was on the J1 visa, and yeah, so everything was smooth. And then so that was in 2012, and then you know, I came back to Kenya, stayed in Kenya up to 2017. By that time, I was working for an NGO that was working very closely with the United Nations, and so my second time to go to the United States was in 2017 at the UN Oceans Conference, where you know, I've always done media production and things like that. Oh, let me breathe. I'm talking like a radio, like a radio show host. Let me take some water. This American story is so sweet, but also you'll see how it gets bitter. You know, I hope my story will be able to inspire somebody to make their life easier as they navigate the American system. So the next time I was I just gone to attend a conference, and it was all smooth. But this was the first time that I actually got to experience like the costs in America. So I was in New York, and man, like in 2017, I think I was staying just a few blocks from the UN complex, I think in Manhattan. I think I paid around, we were paying around, I don't know, it was $240 or $300 a night. And then, you know, like food was like $50 to $70. And so for the very first time, I started to experience, you know, how expensive America might be. But you know, I just going to travel, to attend the conference, and then the third time was when now the rubber started to meet the road. But the rubber hasn't met the road until the fourth time. So during my New York trip, I was like, hey man, people seem to be living good life here in America. Maybe I should, you know, use my contacts and things and try to you know, go back to, and I thought, you know, I had been to the University of Wyoming. It was so nice. Maybe I should go back to another university. And so in the summer of 2019, I started applying for. That time I already had a master's degree and a bachelor's degree. I always had good grades, from when I was in primary school, secondary. So it was easy for me to, apply for a scholarship. And by the way, those guys who are applying for scholarships, can help you sort of navigate the system of contacting professors and things like that. But so I contacted professors in Arizona and in Vermont. So I was admitted. I was actually dual admitted with scholarships at the University of the Northern Arizona University it was in a place called what? Northern Arizona, in a place called Flagstaff, Arizona. At the same time, I was admitted at the University of Vermont in Burlington, Vermont, famous Vermont. And so I had a choice, and I decided, when I Googled up, I was like, the University of Vermont, seemed like, they were paying more. And the University of Vermont is in New England, is, very close to New York. And, New England is a very rich place. Constitutes of the states in New York, and New York, I guess, Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, and then there is Rhode Island. That place is a very wealthy place because of tech and all these bio pharmacy companies and things like that. So I was like, hey, let me go to the University of Vermont. And so when school started in 2019, I showed up as a first-year PhD student at the University of Vermont. And the first time I landed in the airport, I was like, man. And I landed during summer. I was like, man, this is heaven. For those people who know, Vermont during summer is one of the most beautiful places in the world. Like the trees, just everything just looks like heaven, And I was like, wow, man, I had landed in heaven. But little did I know of what awaited me. What I didn't know is that Vermont is actually one of the coldest places to live in, and I'd have to endure like a 6-7 month winter, and so that's when things started to get thick. I hadn't anticipated the cold that was in was in Vermont, and so I started my classes. So I was on a dual scholarship, where I was, helping out at the university in exchange of them paying my school fees and giving me a living stipend and something like that. And so I started out. It was great. The department was great, but the thing that I didn't realize was that the University of Vermont was one of the biggest party schools in America. It was not only one of the biggest party schools, it was one of the most expensive schools in America, And so being there, I started to experience homesickness, but also culture shock, and I actually started to become depressed. And it's one of those paradoxes that people don't talk about when you go abroad, that homesickness is actually a thing, that depression is actually a thing. And for me, growing up in Kenya, I had only, known of depression in books and things like that. But I didn't think that, me, I'm a hard-headed guy. I mean, I got a depression. Now, how do I get depression? But, the heavy PhD work, hey, man, we used to study like crazy. Like, there they don't joke. Like, you study, like, the workloads were crazy. The workload was crazy. The coursework was crazy. The lecturers were brutal. And as one of the few black persons there, I started to experience just a depression, and I like many people in America, started to run away of reality through alcohol and drugs and things like that. And yeah, so after 1 year, you know, at the thick of Corona, I was like, man, I'm done. I was done. You know, I had a good job. I mean, I still appreciate the job that the University of Vermont gave me, but I felt isolated. I felt depressed. I felt I was not myself. Of course, there was so many other personal things that were going on that, but I don't want to expose here. But you know, those are some of the things that people never talk about: the homesickness, the depression, the isolation that sometimes America, that is in America, is real. It's tough, and for me, it hit me hard. And in 2020, I made a conscious decision to come back to Kenya. So that was my third time in America. In America, and so yeah, and yeah, so I came back and I stayed in Kenya for a little bit, and then in 2023, I was like, now this is my fourth shot. So when I was in the University of Vermont, I was there on an F1 visa. So the F1 visa is a student visa. And it was a good visa because, you know, I didn't have all these problems that people are facing with immigration and things like that. And the thing with America is everything has to be straight. Like your papers have to be straight. If you know you go there and do what we call a kemboi, life becomes so difficult. And the fourth time I went is when now things hit the fan, because so in 2023 I decided to go back to America, and so this was the fourth time, and this time around I decided to go to Washington State. You know, people don't know that there's a difference between Washington DC, where like the capital of the United States is, where Trump stays, and all these you know, congressmen and all these politicians and people like that. Then in the Pacific Northwest, like pale in the northwest, the last state there is called Washington, and Washington is, you know, one of the wealthiest liberal states in America. And so when I was choosing the place to go, I was like, hey, let me go to Washington. And so in the summer of 2023, I landed in Seattle, Washington. And Seattle, Washington is an interesting place. It's a very diverse place. In fact, in Washington, I think there's more non-white people than white people. You know, there's Asians, there's people from all over the place. I think the minority is the majority in Washington. Maybe I'm wrong, but you know, so I landed in Seattle, and I sort of I landed there and immediately filed for an asylum. So that means I wanted to change my visa from a non-immigrant to migrant visa, right? And so I entered the asylum system. So that's how I was able to stay there. And so this was the very first time that I experienced the real America. You know, the first 3 times I was sort of an F1 visa, scholar visa, you know, sort of in the universities, in the ivory towers, sort of disconnected from real life America. So this 4th time, when I was in the asylum system, I experienced real life. You know, I had to now, you know, work multiple jobs. I had to begin from scratch. I had to, you know, work the dirty jobs, and of course I went there, studied for a nursing course, and you know, I started doing home care, those home care jobs and things like that. And yeah, and then I sort of left the nursing industry, and then I started doing. I really wanted to get into trucking. You know, like trucking has the money, and you know, there's all these YouTubers and people showing us like the amount of money in dollars that they're making. So I really wanted to get into trucking, but because of several reasons, I was not able to get into trucking. I became an Uber driver, and so I would take people from the Seattle Tacoma International Airport to their homes across Washington. It gave me a wide exposure of the state. I traveled across the state. I traveled to places that I would never have traveled, and I'm really grateful for the experience that I had in Seattle. But by 2024, my body refused, my spirit refused, and in spring 2024, I made a conscious decision to leave America. I took a flight and came back to Kenya, and so. So with these 4 experiences in America, I think I have experienced, I have a little bit of experience that I can share with the people who, dream of going to America or want to go to America. And this is what I found out. When America, the modern America has 3 things. It has the country itself. So this is what I found out after all that crisscrossing, flying across, working, studying, all that. I found out there's 3 things in America. 3 fundamental things. There's the country. There is the people. There's the systems. So the country of America is a beautiful country. If anything, I think that in my whole life, I've been to many places in the world, but America is one of the most beautiful places that I've ever seen. At least during summer. During winter, it's horrible. But during summer, it just transforms into heaven. And so there's the country. America's a beautiful country. So when you're there, if you have a chance, travel across America, go to the parks, experience the travel across states, go visit friends and things like that. Oh, that reminds me, I've actually also been to Kentucky. There's a time when I was in Vermont, I traveled to go see a friend in Kentucky, and it was fun. Anyway, the country is beautiful. So when you are there, take advantage of all opportunities to travel and see America. Don't just stay there and say it's dollars. The second thing is the people. One of the things people don't realize is that America has a lot of people. Whereas in a country like Kenya, we are like 50-60 million people. In America, we have almost, I think, heading towards 400 million people. So when you get there, there is everybody, and out of the 400 million people, everybody is sort of doing their own thing. Like nobody cares about you. So when you get there, you have to sort of take care of yourself, essentially. But one of the things about having so many people in America is I found some of the best people I've ever met there, and some of the most evil people I've ever found anywhere. So you have always to be careful about maybe the people that host you, the people that you interact with, because I genuinely believe that the majority of Americans are good people. Of course, So that's the thing about the people of America. They are many, and they're diverse, and they're some of the best. You get some of the best people and some of the worst people. So you have to be very careful with who you interact with, because the people that you interact with will sort of influence your outcomes. And in some of the episodes that I was there, I interacted with not very good people who led me to bad outcomes. So always look for the right people, people who wish good for you, and that will really help your stay. Finally, and this is the toughest, the American system. And the American system is one of the, I think America has had very visionary presidents in the past, and they sort of build their country, they build highways, they build infrastructure. It's a very developed country. But I feel like America is wealthy now, but it was very wealthy also in the 1950s to the 1980s. There was a lot of, money and things like that going on. And so the system is developed, but it's old. You know what I mean? Like everything is set. Like you don't go there with your, it would be very difficult for you to go there and like create something new. Everything is sort of set. Everybody is sort of in their own silos, and um, and the system is very rigid there, and it's a paradox, because when you think of America, you think America is the land of the free, the land of milk and honey, the land of stars and things like that. But that's the good side. That's the 5%. I don't show you like the 95%. The American system is a very rigid system, and my advice is, if you are able to get into the system, because the system sort of protects you. But one of the other downsides of the system is that it's biased. You'll find that if you're an immigrant, for instance, or if you're black, it's difficult for you to get into the system. It's sort of designed for white people. At least that was my perception of that. That if you're white, if you have a white name, it's easy for you to get into the system, to navigate the system, and become successful in the system, as opposed to if you are an immigrant or if you are a person of color. And I think this is deliberate. I don't know. So those are the three things that you have to understand about America: the country, the people, and the systems. Beyond that, I want to go into the pros and the cons of living in America. So some of the pros of living in America is that it's a diverse place. By diverse, I mean you'll meet people from all over the world, literally all over the world, from China, from Venezuela, Laos, and everywhere. Yeah, and this diversity sort of opens your eyes to the world. Again, I've mentioned it's a beautiful place, and if you get the good people, there's really good people. It's a mind-boggling place. Like, I feel like before I left America, I was sort of close-minded, but after I went there, my mind sort of opened up in a weird way. So it's a very good place to sort of open your mind. The other good thing about America is the dollars, man. There's, of course, people make good money in America. I remember during in Washington, as an Uber driver, I would make in a good month, maybe $6,000, $7,000. That's a lot of money, man. That's like what a member of parliament earns in Kenya, so the money is there. But one of the other things I never realized is that money does not buy happiness. And you realize this when you go there, and you have everything. You have a big house, big car. But I used to own a Tesla when I was there. You know what I mean? Even me, it was not a joke. So there's money, there's everything, I feel like there's all the material things that you'd want in America. Big houses, boats, everything. So the money is an upside. Cars, the food, people argue that the food is not nutritious, which is true. Like, most of it is like processed and things like that, but the food is good. Hey, like the burgers. I used to love McDonald's burgers. Hey, I'd just get out of work, go to McDonald's, or go to Chick-fil-A, or one of those tacos, one of those places. The food is delicious. Maybe it's not nutritionally good, it will cause cancer and things like that, but the food is delicious. That I cannot forget. The other upside of America is jobs. There's jobs everywhere. And you can become anything you sort of want to be. Like, there's small opportunities compared to other places. So so I've talked about the pros. So let's talk about the cons. The cons, I've talked about homesickness. If you're not used to being away from your home, homesickness is a real thing. Depression is a real thing. The winter is a real thing, especially if you live in like the northern places near Canada. Even Canada is very cold. So homesickness and depression and things like that, those are real things. But maybe if you are lucky enough to live in California, where California is called the sunny state, it's more mild, and in places like Texas, it's extremely hot. So the weather is very extreme, unlike Kenya, which is like in the equator and things are very balanced. There's extremes of weather. It's either too cold or too hot. So you have to to think about the weather. The other con is racism. It doesn't matter if you're a professor, if you're educated, if you're a doctor, whatever you are. Sometimes there's places you go just because of your skin color, you become a suspect. And of course, you've seen on social media of people being stopped, people being shot. There is a lot of gun violence. In America, people are allowed to carry guns. Like you're allowed to protect yourself. I think it's called the Fifth Amendment right or something like that. So there's a lot of guns. So if you mess around with somebody there, they can shoot you and nobody will know you've been shot. So there's a lot of gun violence. There's a lot of racism. But it also depends where you live. Maybe if you live in the ghetto, it's more than if you live in the suburbs. I mean, let me tell you, America is a very divided society. If you're living in the ghetto, you're probably living worse. But if you live in a suburb in New York or in California, places like that, those places are like heaven, man, where the billionaires and millionaires live. It's just a different contrast it's a huge wealth gap. So that's one of the cons. It's a huge wealth gap that is there. The other thing is the high cost of living. You'd easily be paying $1,500 for a small, not even a one bedroom, just a small apartment, $1,500. So it's a high cost of living, especially in the cities. There's also like the systematic hurdles that I've mentioned that, sometimes it's just difficult to go up the ladder depending on your race. Also, there's something else that people don't talk about: debt. American debt is one of the worst debt you can get into. For instance, if you buy a house, I mean, it's they call it the American dream: a house and 2 cars and a dog. Some mortgages run 30-40 years. So if you arrive in America when you're 25, you'll probably finish paying off your house when you're 65. So you're basically just living your life because of a house. And also there's credit scores. Sometimes if your credit score is low, you will not be able to access some things. And so when you get there, try not to get into too much debt. Try to be fiscally responsible. Try to be financially free, which is also quite difficult. Also, because of the high cost of living, you probably have to do multiple jobs, like 3 jobs, moving from one job to another. Sometimes it can take a toll on your mental, on your mental capacity. You have to work long hours just to survive. The last time I was in Washington, I would drive for miles, like 500 miles every day. I was so tired, man. My body was like, no. So it can be tough, especially if you're not rich. But if you're rich, you will enjoy America, my friend. If you're rich, you don't even have to suffer with all these visa problems. You can go get the Trump gold card. Yeah, it's just $1 million. I think it's $1 million or $5 million, something like that. So if you have like $10 million, you can just buy the Trump gold card and then go buy a house by Lake Washington, somewhere in Seattle, and do whatever you want. Get in with your private jet. So actually, that's how America is structured. In America, it's all about money. It is the ultimate of capitalism. So if you have money, you live like a king. If you don't have money, my friend, you live and eat from a dustbin. So when you go there, ensure that your finances are sort of in order. So this podcast today was just sharing my American dream or my American nightmare and why I left America, and sort of just sharing my experience and with people so that they can be prepared when they go there, and thinking of modern America. I think it's become tough to be an immigrant in America. Long time ago, people used to just show up in boats. They call the Mayflower boats, used to arrive in New York, and people were received, and it was kumbaya, everybody was happy. but now it's tougher. The current American administration under Trump is more skeptical of immigrants and more brutal. So you also have to consider that, which I think is a good thing and a bad thing. It's a good thing because it rids America of criminals, because it's true that in America there was so many criminals because of the open border policy. There were so many bad people who were in such a good place, and I also experienced that. And so I think it's a good thing that Trump is sort of getting the criminals out of America, the people who, have taken advantage of the system, and people who have been very entitled to America. I think it's a good thing. On the other hand, I think it's a bad thing because America is a country of immigrants. Like, there is nobody who can claim, even Trump himself, his grandfather was from Germany. So there's nobody who can claim America, apart maybe from the Native Americans who lived there before even the white man came. So, and it is the immigrant populations that have made America great. When you look at great companies, like Amazon, Jeff Bezos is from Cuba. Google, the CEOs of Google, Microsoft are from India. It is the immigrants who have sort of contributed to the diversity and the culture, not only the cultural but the economic diversity of America. And so limiting immigration will probably, I don't know, maybe hurt America in the long term. But I don't know, we'll leave it to Trump. You, Trump, handle it. You're the president of America. So yeah, so thank you so much for being part of this, of my American journey. If you have any comments or questions on, like booking tickets to America, American visas, consultations on maybe, or even if you're in America and you want to come back to Kenya, if you're Kenyan, you want to come back to America, if you're Kenyan in America, you want to come back to Kenya. I understand you, so I can, I can, pick you up from the airport. I can integrate you into the Kenyan society. If you're somebody in the diaspora, maybe the Black American wanting to experience Africa, and sort of get somebody who understands you, I'm there for that. And any other, if you're like an African student who wants to go and study there, you don't know where to begin. If you're traveling to America, you don't know where to book the ticket, you don't know how to navigate the system, I can sort of help you. My number is on the Njoroge Washege podcast channel. And yeah, I'm so happy to share my American journey with you. And I feel like now the thing with podcasting is sometimes we have a lot of things in our heads, and until we speak them out, that's when we sort of integrate those shadows and put them behind us. For me, America has been both bitter and sweet. It's been great, and I have had some of the greatest experiences and some of the worst experiences. So for me, it's bittersweet. I haven't closed off the door for America fully. Maybe the fifth time I'm going to be maybe a dollar billionaire, and I'll be able to buy the Trump gold card and not struggle with the American system and things like that. I think that's the only way I'll come back to America. But in the meantime, I'm open to coming to the universities, coming to conferences, meeting friends, coming to give talks and things like that. But my American journey has been interesting. If this is the end of my American journey, if I never get to visit America again, I'm grateful for the people, the friends, the moments, the beauty, and everything that I experienced there. And if the universe opens opportunities for me to come back to America, I'll not come back to America to suffer. That I have decided. Yeah, so this video was an answer to all the people who always ask me, why did you leave America? That is why. Stay tuned to the Njoroge Washege podcast. Thank you.